From bringing kickboxing into the MMA to defeating Israel Adesanya 3 times, Alex Pereira is on a roll, and it's pretty safe to say that Adesanya will never win a fight against him. The facts speak for themselves. If you can't defeat an opponent once, you try again and again. At least that's what Adesanya thought. But it doesn't seem to be working out for him. After beating him thrice, Alex thinks that he can beat the former champion in both kickboxing and mixed martial arts. He knows exactly how to get Adesanya in the ring, and it's about time for him to accept that. Plus, Pereira is speaking from experience. Recently, he told fans that when he lost 3 times to the same opponent as an amateur kickboxer, he learned a valuable lesson. Adesanya was a nightmare opponent for former champion Robert Whittaker, but the Brazilian realized that some fighters just don't match up well with others' styles. Whittaker has lost to Adesanya twice in the UFC.
Gotta be very careful.
Whittaker nearly out on his feet. Adesanya trying to close it out. Israel Adesanya.
The last stylebender has lost to Pereira 3 times. With 28 amateur fights under his belt, you can be sure that he knows what he's talking about. He's still unbeaten after 25 wins by knockout and has a little piece of advice for his opponent. Adesanya should realize that each fighting style in the MMA is very different from the other, and he should play to his strengths, not his weaknesses. I'm not sure he'd be taking the advice, though. Their rivalry has been going on since 2016. In Glory of Heroes 1, they met for the first time in a kickboxing match in China. Pereira won by unanimous decision. Adesanya's career in kickboxing came to an end when Alex beat him again a year later. Pereira shocked the mixed martial arts world when he knocked out Adesanya in a fight for the UFC middleweight title. That makes it 3 times.
Adesanya's on one leg. 2 more. Down goes the champion. Pereira trying to close the show. And do it.
While it doesn't seem like he's learning any lessons, he does have an idea why he lost. In the 5th round of their UFC 281 title match,
5th and final round.
It seems like we're looking at 3-1 pretty comfortably for the champion.
Alex looked like he was going to lose by decision, but by the final round, he pushed the champion against the cage and hit him hard, hurting him enough for the referee to stop the fight. Pereira's leg kick made it hard for him to move and put his left leg in danger. That's when he knew that he would lose once again. Plus, his fighting style is super amazing. He's been credited with bringing kickboxing into the MMA. Pereira was an easy choice for the UFC because he was a world-class kickboxer. He proved this again by beating fellow Glory graduate Adesanya thrice. It wasn't always clear how well he would fit into the UFC, but look at his stats. I think he's doing pretty well. We already knew he could knock out his opponents, and his wrestling was super good. And he's a pretty strong competitor in the MMA. Just look at his fighting style and you'll know in your heart.
Knockout victory over Israel Adesanya, one of the best middleweights in the world. And that left
against the ropes. He's on the verge of getting knocked out if he doesn't.
Oh, that knee may have done it!
That Adesanya can never beat him. In most MMA fights, opponents are kept farther away from each other than in kickboxing. This is because at close kickboxing range, it takes less effort for a wrestler to grab an opponent and pull them down. When there's more space between the two fighters, it's harder for the wrestler to get a takedown. In MMA, no man's land is more important than in any other combat sport. If a kickboxer wants to keep the fight going, they need to keep control of the no man's land. This means that they'll need more room. Single strike experts do better at longer distances. This is bad news for kickboxers who fight in combinations most of the time. Some MMA fighters, like Max Holloway, are great at putting together combos.
This is exactly where he doesn't want to be, and beautiful combinations and body shot by Max Holloway.
Max Holloway.
But the vast majority of competitors must be able to get in and out of striking range quickly. People used to make fun of kickboxing legend Gokhan Saki for not being able to adapt to MMA. A crazy idea, since his record in the UFC was 1-1 in his 2 fights there. I wouldn't call him a disaster, though a lot of people did. Still, he had to change his style a lot more than you'd ever know. The Turkish Tyson was known for his lightning-fast combinations off the lead hand. However, they're very hard to land in MMA unless your opponent is backed up against the fence. On the other hand, Israel Adesanya may be the best striker in MMA.
Israel Adesanya.
Even though he's not nearly as good at kickboxing as Gokhan Saki was, and has never won a major title, he's a striker who can make a difference for his team.
They have both thrown 93 strikes. Pereira has landed 50, Adesanya 45.
just like the famous Mirko Cro Cop. He liked to use single powerful blows instead of combos, and he mixed these with simple, single attacks in a way that was similar to Cro Cop's. This made him very hard to predict. He used to be in charge of the no man's land with his fake punches and kicks. By distracting them with fake blows, the real ones might not hurt as much when they finally hit. With a series of complicated feints, he completely takes his opponent out and breaks him down. He showed promise as a kickboxer, but his skills are better suited to MMA, where he can take his time getting to know his opponent and doesn't have to be constantly moving to win. While his style has always helped him win, it didn't when he went up against Pereira. There's one big reason behind that. Alex can knock someone out with just one punch. Adesanya, on the other hand, has to rely on his skill and strategy to get knockouts, and on his feints to set himself up for a win. Pereira seems to be slowing down in his kickboxing so far. He has always liked big 1-2 punches more than long combos. In MMA, he has slowed down even more, picking his strikes with the confidence that he can hit them often and hard. Even though he's still working on his takedown defense, he knows the basics, and he uses them to his advantage. One thing that Pereira has going for him that Adesanya doesn't is, he can finish an opponent with a single shot if the wrestler gets too close or if there's a lot of action.
Good, because he's...
Oh! Massive move from Pereira!
That's why!
Pereira has done it again!
That's why!
I don't think he'd be as good at MMA technique as Adesanya, but his explosive power, athleticism, and real kickboxing skills make him a threat. They're familiar with each other's fighting styles, but Pereira has the edge. He won the UFC middleweight title with a technical knockout win.
By TKO and new UFC undisputed middleweight champion of the world.
This was the end of a long and interesting road to the title. The two opponents didn't waste any time and went right to it when their match began. Pereira won because he was always on the attack, but his opponent didn't back down either. It all came down to skill. As of now, Pereira is still Adesanya's most dangerous opponent in any kind of fight. His kickboxing skills and his strength are what led to his victories. He only had to win 7 fights before he could face Adesanya, and 3 of those wins were in the UFC. Alex has established himself as a major contender. On the other hand, because of this loss, Adesanya's time as the champion of his division is over. With these 3 super amazing fights, there seems to be a rematch in the wings for the two of them. Adesanya is a very competitive person, so it's unlikely that he'd give up a 4th chance to beat a player who has always been a pain. Even though the two strikers will almost certainly meet again, the odds are in Alex's favor. Even though Adesanya has beaten some of the best fighters in his division, such as Robert Whittaker, Jared Cannonier, and Marvin Vettori, if he hasn't figured out how to beat Pereira by now, it's pretty likely he won't be able to do it in the future either. That's all I have to say on why Israel Adesanya will never win against Alex Pereira.